Hey, it's Joy. Welcome back to Inktober. It's day 21. I can't believe it. We're almost done with October. Today we're discussing everything we need to know about ink blending. Now, I have done several videos for Inktober, so some of this might be redundant, but I am starting out by using one of the flat foam dome blenders that we're all used to, and I'm using Lady Liberty ink. And I'm showing you that it's really hard to get a seamless blend, that you leave a lot of the circles and the indentations of the foam. That second stripe, I showed the foam domed blenders, and there you get a really nice creamy blend without any of the harsh lines. And then to get an even smoother blend or softer blend, I use blending brushes. Now, a key with blending brushes is you need to start off of the page and work on. So down at the bottom, you see that I'm just showing you how if you put the brush straight down, you get the ovals of the blending brush and all the texture. It is really hard to get a really good blend from there. I mean, dye inks do dry back, after some time. But to start out with, you have a really hard time overcoming those harsh lines. So I recommend either the foam domed blenders or blending brushes. Now, if you want a really soft blend, you can hold the blending brush all the way back on the handle and you'll get a very, very light touch. Now, another thing to talk about ink blending is what kind of paper you use. So I am going to use the same three inks, being Lady Liberty, Welsh Dragon, and Tartan Teal. And I am blending those all onto three different papers, all using foam dome blenders. The first one is hammer mill paper, 80 pound. It's what I do most of my Copic coloring with. And as always, I always recommend to blend everything twice. You go lightest to darkest, then do your darkest to your lightest, and I do that with all three panels. But I love the way that this blends on smooth cardstock. Now, if you were using Maker Forte's paper or if you were using Nina, you would get almost the same exact blend. But I'm just showing you here that you get a smooth blend and it's nice and vibrant and in your face, which is what I love. Now, I am speeding all of the blending up by 2 times so that we can get through this. Otherwise, we would have about an hour long. So here I am writing on the back of that smooth cardstock. Next, I am coming in with watercolor paper. This is Canson XL. And again, I'm doing exactly the same thing. I'm starting with the Lady Liberty. And I'm just putting that down. And you're going to see the ink kind of soaks into the paper and you don't get as bright of a shade when you first start out. And that is just true of watercolor paper, just because it's thicker and more coarse. So the ink kind of blends down into the paper. I follow that with the Welsh Dragon. And I come in with that Tartan Teal. Now, aren't you amazed at how Tartan Teal blends? When you first put that down, it looks scary dark. I absolutely love Tartan Teal. It's probably my maybe second or third favorite color Hive ink. You all know that Vegas Strip is my favorite. But Tartan Teal is one of my favorites. It's on the top list. Here I am comparing the two. Now, my third piece of paper is Bristol Smooth, and Bristol Smooth is what I like to use for any type of mixed media type stuff, or I actually like to use colored pencils on it because it has just enough tooth, but it's not too rough. So you can use some water on Bristol Smooth. It'll hold up. Now, you can't drench it like you do with watercolor paper, but it is good for your everyday blending and adding splatter and adding like different sprays. So keep that in mind. And I really encourage you to try all 3 papers and do exactly what I'm doing. I don't care what colors you use. If you have what I have, try it and make a tag so that way you have it for reference for the next time you make a project. I am working this through again, going through 2 blends. That is always what I do no matter what substrate I'm using. But you're going to see that we get 3 really distinct differences in these papers, and I'm going to show those to you in just a minute. Now I do opt to mist my papers. Now you're going to see on the smooth cardstock that water reacts and it turns white almost immediately. On the watercolor, it kind of runs a little bit and I actually have to mop it up to get that white. And then on the Bristol, you didn't get as much of a difference in that. Now I'm doing another technique almost the same using watercolor. It's the Canson XL. And I'm putting the dark color at the top, the mid-tone in the middle, and the light at the bottom. But I am leaving areas of white. And that's because I want you to see how these inks react on watercolor paper. And it's stunning. This is probably one of my favorite things to do with these Color Hive inks. I love watching the colors meld. It almost looks water dipped. Now I do use a microfiber cloth just to mop up some of the mess, and I do dry it off camera. Nope, I'm doing it here just so that we get an idea of what it's going to look. This is probably one of my favorite panels. So I had a request from a good friend of mine to show how to do scene building with inks. So I am going to do a winter scene, and I start that out by stamping the Sleigh Bouquet in Eclipse black ink. Off camera, I colored it with my Copics, and I did that, like I said, this video would, if I had included my coloring, maybe it would have been an hour to an hour and a half. But we are talking about blending inks and creating scenes today. So you saw that I put the sleigh on my A2 panel just to see how it would line up. I am using the tree line from It's Snowing, and I am inking that up with Speckled Egg Distress Oxide ink. I do that because it's a nice snowy color, and it can go either blue or it can go green depending on what you pair with it. So that's a really good one. I've actually used Speckled Egg for clouds before and for skies, so it is a great color to have in your arsenal. Now I am coming in with Distress ink in the color Evergreen Bough, and that has a little bit of a turquoise look to it, and I am lightly stamping that over the Speckled Egg just to give our trees dimension. So here comes the scene building. First, I start by tearing a piece of paper. That way I can put in snowbanks and just landscape lines. On the other side of that, I cut out a hillside. If you have a hillside die, you could do that, but really just cutting out something with your scissors works. Now, I ended up using the page that had had both sides cut out. So for the bottom, I'm showing you that I'm using Distress Oxide, and I'm using blending brushes for this because I want a soft blend. You could use a foam blender, but you're going to get a much concentrated color, and for snow, we want more white than we want blue. So I am putting in my first hillside, and for this, I am blending down. So that way, the bottom of the paper is white, and we've got a little bit of a buildup. Now I decide to put in some shading where the tree line is. So I put in my first landscape line, and I'm using the side that's a little bit flatter, that doesn't have that big divot in it. And I am applying with a little bit of a heavy hand that line. In fact, I think I went light the first time, and I realized I didn't like it. So I added even more of the tumbled glass so that we could get a snowy look. And I love the way that is. We just needed to have those trees grounded. We needed to give the illusion of snowdrifts and of hills. So you're going to see that I take that torn out side and I move it back and forth so I don't have the same lines everywhere. Now I am trying to figure out where my sled is going to go. And I decide that I need a few more hillsides just so that our sleigh doesn't look like it's like hill jumping. I want it to be grounded. If you wanted to hill jump, my goodness, you can do that. That would probably be a hilarious card, but I figured Santa and all of his presents probably wanted to be a little bit grounded while they were going through this forest, but you can make up whatever story you like. I know that when I'm crafting, I try to think about what's happening in the scene, who's going to get it, what their feelings are going to be. Now for the sleigh, I went with a very traditional Christmas color because I thought it would pop well on these turquoises and these bright greens, or muted greens I should say. And I love this. I think it turned out beautiful, and I don't think right now on the screen it gives it justice. It's when I do my close-ups at the end, you will see it. Now we do need to give the sky some color. You can't just have it all white. So I'm going in with a light hand with the tumbled glass, and I am just blending that. I am not making sure to get a smooth blend. In fact, blotchy is probably better than not. I love this panel. I think this turned out beautiful. I would love to receive this as a Christmas card. I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Right now I'm trying to decide where I'm going to put my sentiment, and I try it up top, and that didn't speak to me, and then I opt to put it below, and I leave my mistakes in like always so that you can see it. I ink this up with Eclipse black ink, and then when I go to open my Misti door after burnishing it, I drop it and I get a slight offset stamping. So I'm not going to start over at this point. There's always a way to fix it. So I back the sled with double-sided foam adhesive, and that's because I like dimension on my cards. If you don't, by all means, please glue it down. I do make sure to use like a 1/8 inch thin adhesive. That way I can mail it. Anything that is a 1/4 inch or smaller requires just a regular stamp. So one thing about snow is when you splatter it, it needs to go over all of the things. You don't splatter so that it's just in the background. Otherwise, it's not realistic. Snow would be on, if it was actively snowing, would be on top of the sleigh, on top of the presents. So that is why I splattered that. And I used acrylic paint for that. And honestly, the acrylic paint picked up a lot of my Distress Oxide ink. So you don't see a lot of the snow, but I am going to add snow another way. To fix my sentiment, I use the tumbled glass, and I just blend that over a card panel, and I trim that down to be about a 1/2 inch, and I stamp the Merry Christmas using the Eclipse black ink, and voila, everything is fixed on my card. You would never know that I messed up unless you were watching this. The sender would have no idea. So that's why I always tell you, embrace your mistakes, embrace what you love about your cards, and fix them. Embellish them, do whatever it is that you need to do so that you can salvage your projects. These are not Hallmark, they're handmade, and I think that that's what the whimsy or the charm of a handmade card is that somebody knows that you labored over them and that you love them enough that you sent it to them. So just keep that in mind and don't be hard on yourself. Absolutely send your cards. I send every single card I get. In fact, right now I am in the middle of sending my dad a card for 100 days, and I tell him what I'm doing every single day, and he gets a huge kick out of it, and from what I understand, he's got them saved in a file cabinet. So here's the card, and now we're going to add some marshmallow paste. Full disclosure, my marshmallow paste is several years old. Whatever year it came out is the year that I bought it. And like any paste that you would ever buy, whether it's a glitter paste or it's a modeling paste, it starts to dry out. I do recommend putting some press and seal over it to keep it as good as it can be. But my biggest advice about paste are use it. Use it before you lose it. So I applied the snow to the tree line. And what's cool about this marshmallow paste is once you add heat to that, it puffs up like marshmallows or like snow. And this is where I had the request that somebody wanted to know how to use it, so here it is. I also, using a new jar, because it was much thinner and easier to apply, I put it along the rudders of the sleigh, and I just continued to use my heat gun to make that bubble up. And I love it. Now, a tip with marshmallow paste is once you have it heated, you need to set it aside and let it continue to dry. If you continue to mess with it, it will fall off because it's got to have time to do its thing, to adhere, to become permanent. So here I am showing, I wrote new and old on my glass mat. I am using my new paste, and I'm just showing you that consistency. It's like mayonnaise almost, or not quite marshmallow fluff, just so you know. So you're going to see how easy that spreads and how thin it goes. So when I did that tree line, I didn't have that luxury. So please use your paste before it gets thick on you. Here's the older, and I am showing you that it's a much thicker paste, and I didn't choose that much paste to use. I didn't have much of a choice. So if you want a really thick embossing, then by all means use your old. I mean, I still am going to use mine until it's hard as a rock, but I'm taking my heat gun to this and I am showing you the difference. And right now on camera you're not really seeing the full effect, but once I pick it up and I kind of tilt it, you're going to see how much difference this makes. And neither one of them are right or wrong. I just wanted to show you that consistency does make a difference. And on the right, you could tell that that paste wasn't all the way dry. And that's what I'm saying is you've got to lay it aside and let it finish drying. Here I am making a scene. This is what I love to do. I colored all of the, I think it was Magical Brew was the stamp set. I colored all of those with Copic markers off camera. And I laid them out the way I wanted it. And then I put my finger where the highest point of my hill was. And I added just a little small dash with a mechanical pencil. And then I used Cotswold green and I formed the hillside. And then I came in with British Racing green and I added the dark color to the end. And the reason I did that was because I am going to have a moon and the top of the hillside needs to be brighter. I used a circle die. We do have these in the Maker Forte shop if you are interested. And I start by blending lemon color Hive ink around the moon. That is so I have a halo. I then come in with Vegas strip color Hive ink and I blend that in all of the areas that are white. I leave a small area that's white around the yellow just so that I don't make green. And I'm very careful. I'm actually using the side of my foam dome blender to go between the grass and the moon, and I was being super careful. You absolutely could bring in a smaller brush or applicator if you have one. I later do bring one in. And again, I am not too worried about the blend because I am going to add multiple colors to my sky so that it is multi-dimensional. So next I bring in the grape ink, but before I do that, I bring in a small detail brush to add that area between the moon and the hillside, and make sure to tap that off so that you don't get a harsh line. Now is the grape color Hive ink, and I am putting that over the Vegas strip, and that's just so that we get a more of a twilight color. I love this combination, but I'm still going to go darker. It's all about adding layers and adding dimension so that your sky is believable. And I just continue to work those inks, and I make sure to leave that halo around the moon. I think that's really important. Now you're going to see at that top corner, I did go over that with grape, and that yellow in the grape made a brown. I don't care. We're going to fix that later on. I now come in with sugar plum, and sugar plum really makes this into a night sky, and you're going to see I really blend that over that corner where I had that brownish tone. And I am getting tons and tons of saturation here. This is becoming a believable sky, and it's starting to be a little bit eerie, but we're not done. We're going to keep going. I mean, Halloween has to be spooky and eerie and all the night things. So I splatter this with water, and I mop up the excess water so that I get dimension in my sky. And then I dry it with my heated tool. It's important to dry in between so that way you preserve some of the nuggets of color that are in there. Now I am coming in with Eclipse black ink. And so some of those lighter colors are going to shine through, and other parts of it are going to get darker. And I want that. You're going to see I even extend some of that black onto the green grass, and that's just to darken it, to make this believable that this is a night scene. You're not going to have this like bright green grass that you have during the day show up at night, so you've got to darken it. You've got to mute that to make it believable. And now I am bringing in, I've still got the Eclipse ink, and I just lightly put that around the yellow part. Here I am bringing in Snow Flurries Pigment ink. I decided to do that instead of acrylic paint, and I like this better. I covered up the grass because I don't want this to be snow. I want this to be stars. And I am just applying the splatter throughout the panel. No rhyme or reason. I just want a really starry, spooky sky. Now I put my animals kind of in place, and wherever we have the little white areas that my Scan and Cut didn't cut out, I used a mini blender and I put in the colors of the grass and of the background just so that the white wasn't so garish. You don't have to do that. That's just something that I like to do. I also had used fog ink, and I had it formed clouds across the moon using that same torn paper effect that I used for the snow in the first card. Finally, I bring in my sentiment, and it's double toil and trouble. I embossed that with embossing glue and white powder so that it would show up. I do love the fact that this shows up vibrant, even though I had splattered the sky. So then I popped that up on foam tape, and I put it on an A2's top folding landscape card made of Eclipse black paper. I am arranging my trick-or-treaters so that the one with the kettle isn't looking off the page, because that never looks good. It doesn't please the eye. Using a gel pen, I am drawing in the bubbles from the kettle, because when I cut it, I cut those off. So that would be part of the stamp if you didn't use a Scan-A-Cut. So this is the end of day 21 Inktober. Thank you so much for being with me. Bye-bye. Take care.